don't know if there's somebody there to speak to.
I've got. Sorry. If no one else, but I'll take it otherwise.
Oh wow, really thin on the ground today.
Yeah, that's what I thought maybe it's cancer.
No, thank you.
Wow, it's been such a hectic day. Goodness. So this is the best part of the day. Sit down, discuss our minimum. That's right. Everybody's nervous about the minimum. You have to remember that. Oh, it's actually exactly 25 past. Another minute. This one says, oh, now it's 25 past. Oh, have to remember that. Mr. Shom writes, he likes those who judge Kleisel favorably. At the end of the day, people spend money, time, energy, they take it, they're careful with it. It's very special. Obviously, there's always maybe tiny, small rooms for improvements, but the reality is, I was speaking to Rob today, quite Rob, and I know I'm being recorded, very chashuv. He said to me, I'm never going to admit this in public. I'm not going to tell you the Rob's name. So I don't know if you've seen, but there's big signs against lace cap shatels. Right. He said, just didn't understand. He said, do you think this is what Hashem's upset about? He said, you a woman, she gets married, she works hard day and night, either look after children or panos, wants a husband too, and she covers her hair. We talk about somebody who wears a lace cap shatel must be covering her hair. He was going on about how the makri for Torah, they could indulge themselves, they could walk up and down the beaches in their underwear like some grave joy. They don't do that. So fine, they want to look nice. Okay, they want to think. Not about Isur Derais, I'm afraid to tell you, because the reality is that even not real hair is not, it's a same, it's no love. What? It's not, it can't possibly be. The most it could be is Ma'aser Ein of Isur D'Rabbanan. So he's very disturbed. It's like you can sometimes make the women feel that that's the worst, when the reality is they're the best. Is there room for improvement? There's always room for improvement, but to make as if, like, you know, Shloch was sitting there and annoyed about this, he was very upset about it. It is a shaitel where the top of it, I think, over here, I'm pretty sure, is makes it look like, makes it more realistic. That's all it is. That is it. He was very said, I'm never going to say this to public, so you can't dare quote me because I'll have a head chopped off. No, okay. That's right.
Stages.
Okay, the same stage.
And then
10 years. Yes. That's right. The question is only how long will they? We should buy them now because once they become thin, they'll go up in price. No, but hopefully not. The Chatzashon. Niklaf, the Mishnah says a peeled esrog is no good. We're up to Lamed Him base 3 lines from the bottom. Omar highest swig, that was to 2 lines. Highest swig at the Igvid Kahina Sumka. An esrog which has been peeled like a red date, because Sheva it is kosher. So if you peel the esrog, it is fine. How can you say it's fine? Well, our Mishnah says Niklaf posel. If it's peeled, it's posel. So there's a contradiction from the Mishnah that says if it's peeled, it is posel to Rav that says it's okay. Lo kasha says well, it's not a kasha. We're up to the top line on Amud Vav Amud Aleph. Habe kulob, habe miktzos. So the Mishnah, now this is a major machlekes rishonim, fascinating machlekes rishonim. Again, Rav said the peeled esrog is okay. The Mishnah says clearly niklaf is possible. Contradiction. What do we do? So it depends if it's all of it or part. Rashi says, which is counterintuitive, that if you peel all of it, it's okay. Why? Oh, you guessed it. Because it doesn't look spotted. It doesn't look bitty. So if you peel the entire essay, like you got to be entire essay peeled, that's fine. If you peel part of it, it looks menuma. Menuma means a spotted essay, and therefore it's no good. That is how Rashi says. So the entire essay is peeled. Tosfos disagrees. You see the Tosfos on Zvav Medalef, the beginning of the middle side lines, and he says, "Push good to be possible to execute menuma. It looks like it's spotted. Push ipcha. Bekula possible. The whole essay is possible because the whole thing has been peeled. But part of it is okay. The mechaber goes like a ben Yochanan, and therefore a partly peeled esrog, according to the Mechaber, is generally okay. The question is, how much is a part? Why was this? How little is little? It means a little bit is okay. That is something which is not, there are many shittahs. And that is why it's preferable to take an Esther which hasn't been peeled at all. And one has to be very careful that if one's touching somebody else's Esther, let's say a shopkeeper, not to ruin it by peeling it, because at the end of the day, you're going to write to spoil. But not necessarily a peeled Esther is possible. One cannot say peeled Esther is possible. According to Rashi, it's absolutely, no, according to Rashi, it's no good a bit. According to Tosos, bit is okay. But the Maisa, one should have to be very careful not to. That would be worse than when taking a possible Esther, it's start passing other people's Esther. It says in the Shabbat, nistak nikab, if it's split or it's got a hole. Tani ulaba chanina. Nikav the fullish, if it's a through and through hole, b'mashu, in a small amount. The she'enim a fullish, if it's not in the fullish, not through and through, the che'issa is the size of an issa, which is a coin. So here's a through and through. Can anybody see this needle going through and through? Can you see it? It's a through and through esrog. And here we're talking about where it's not through and through, can you see? And it's only ke'issa. And again, there's a big machlokes to show him what did he mean. That means like this. In our Mishnah, it says, if it's got a hole, then it depends. What does it depend? What's the Mishnah say? Does anybody remember? What's the Mishnah say? Oh, it's good to see. If it's something missing, it's no good. If it's not missing, it's okay. It says the Gemara now, another thing. It depends if it's a through and through, or if it's the size of an issa. And here we have a huge machlokes. Literally every Mishnah like this, like split down the middle. What do we mean? Do we mean if it's missing something and it's a through and through, then it's possible, or if it's the size of a issa, which is a big thing, big coin, or therefore to be possible, it have to have two things. It has to be through and through, plus be missing something, or maybe not. Maybe this is like this. If it's missing something, it's always possible. And the Mishnah says if it's not missing anything, it is kosher. And on that we say, if it's through and through, then it's no good. Again, the Mishnah differentiates between missing something or not missing something. The Gemara differentiates between the size of a through and through, and then even if it's the size of a pin, or if it's a big one, but it's not through and through. The question is the Gemara being makel on the Mishnah being more machmir? Is the Gemara talk about a case where it's not missing anything? And afar pikain, if it's through and through, it's no good. Or is the Gemara talking about a case where it is missing something and saying, but even if it's missing something, if it's not thrown through, it's okay. So that is a machlokes for showing him. And again, it's something which is not passive. It's all the way down to b'shas atchak. You should take one which is not missing anything. If it's missing something, then it is very, very interesting. And just for all the famous questions, Mechaber paskins that the dried out esser which has no moisture is possible. Says the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, how can you possibly know if the esrog is dry all the way inside? What does he say? Take a pin, tie it to a string, push it all the way through the esrog, pull it out on the other side, and then feel if the string is moist. And everybody, but literally everybody asks. He said, I remember once I learned by something, Maram, in the back of the Gemara, often asks, the world ask. And he said this more, if I was anybody, he said, I don't understand. If you go to the bus stop and you stop 10 different going, and you ask them, what's bothering you? None of them will say that kasha bothers them. So how can you say the whole world asks? The answer is the whole world, those who matter in the world ask. So the whole world asks on the Mechaber. How can he say such a suggestion? By the time you finish pushing the needle through and through with the string, and then you'll feel the string at the end and see if it's dry or moist, either way your esrog is possible because it's a through and through. Oh, very good. Only if it's missing something, and this they consider the Jews not missing. What's helping them after Succos? No, that's not what Mechaber says. That's not what Mechaber says. Oh, very good. What says that answer? Wow. I want to throw you right. The Shabbos says that answer. You take the needle, push it in, take it and come out from the same side. And he says, even if it doesn't come out exactly the same place, it's not through and through. And therefore it is okay.
How do you twist the needle inside the esrog?
He says it's possible because he says you must remember the esrog has ridges and you can actually push it to go into one ridge, can't another ridge. I don't. What?
I could just push it in halfway and pull it out.
The Chaver doesn't say, Chaver says put it through the esrog. What the Shabbos says.
All the way in.
Yeah.
Can't rely on rope.
No, we obviously would talk about an esrog which looks dry on the outside and everything. Okay. 3 lines from the top. Rav asks the following shadow. No do esrogs for the treif about. In when we learn cholit, there are many things that if you look at an animal, it becomes treif. There are actually 18 things, which if an animal has it, it's treif. One of them, by the way, if it's all its skin has been peeled off, which is, by the way, Tosfos' proof against Rashi. I missed out, I didn't read the whole Tosfos. Rashi says if it's completely peeled, what's the din? It's okay. Why? Because it doesn't look spotted. So this is not sure. An animal missing all its skin is a treif. Okay. The halacha is that there are 18 simone treifa by an animal. The question is, if these simonim would happen to an esrog, is the esrog kosher or not? So one says we don't. Might come in point. What exactly is this question? In Niklaf, if it's talking about where it's missing the peel, and he wants to know if that's treifa. Tanina, Mishnah says clearly what the halacha is by Niklaf. You don't need to ask a new question. It's mefusha. In this tag, if it's split, Tanina, Mishnah talks about it. In Niklaf, if that esrog's got a hole in Tanina. So which case exactly are we talking about? That Rava says if it's got a simon treifa. Answers well, the lungs have what's called bronchi inside it, and they have pipes which bring in the air, and the bronchi actually absorb the air. Now you have pipes which bring the air into the lungs, and like a membrane which is inside the lungs. I'm not a doctor or a biologist. I don't know the details of that one. I've never seen a lung. But that's how the Gemara there describes it. Now the halacha is that if the bronchi if become liquefied, that means it's become moldy to the extent that it's actually become into a liquid, which is not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a pieces of skin. If it becomes into liquids, so a lung that you can pour the flesh inside it like you pour a jug, it's kosher. That doesn't make the animal a treifa. The simpoinus have to be a ground, the simpoinus of the pipes. If the pipes are okay, even if the membrane which absorbs the air has become liquidized, that's a fine. So the whole can is simpoinus. If it's liquidized, if the pipes are no good treifa. Hachamai, what's the shtin if the middle of the esrog has become juicy to the extent that it's properly liquid? What's the din? There, as long as the pipes are round, eventually it'll get better because there's no air going in, because the lungs are all enclosed within the body. When there's air around the esrog, maybe the esrog will go bad. That means the shaila of Rava was one specific case. And that is the case where a person's got an esrog where the inside has become like liquid, where if you shake it, you would hear a little bit the same sound that you would hear when you shake a bottle. And that is the question of years ago, somebody told me that when they saw they made the law, they changed it, that before you take it, about 25 years ago, and there's a law that you couldn't take an esrog out of Eretz Yisrael without it being checked, getting a stamp from authorities. I don't remember what it was to do with the germs or something. And one time he said he took an esrog, a beautiful esrog, him, his father was going, and the inspector picked it up, he gave the stamp. He said, I just want you to know though that your esrog is possible. And he said this person was standing there without a cap on and looked like he'd never even seen a safe in his life. So how would you know the esrog is possible? So because I pick up hundreds of them every day. And what happens is I can guess approximate weight of an esrog by just picking it up. This esrog is very, very light. The inside is completely rotted and moldy. And you opened it up and the inspector was correct. So it's interesting. Well, maybe. Okay. So that's the question. Toshaba. So the question is an esrog which is moldy. More than moldy, it is liquidized liquid. Esrog tofuach, and esrog which is bloated, savuach which is moldy, kovush which is cooked. Kovush means it's soaked in water for 24 hours. We mentioned it a lot yesterday. Sholok actually heated up in a pan. Kushia, black esrog, lovan, a white esrog, umenuma, spotted esrog possible. Esrog kikadu, an esrog which is the shape exactly like a tennis ball possible. V'yeshem afatiyon, a twin esrog. I want to show you a twin esrog. That's a nice picture over here with twin esrog here. Look at these esrogim, twin esrogim. Somebody asked me, I don't know, is it a computer image or is it a real picture? I haven't actually seen a twin esrog, but this is a twin esrog, so it's possible. Esrog are boisa, an esrog which is not ripe, but kiva boisa chomim machshir. You grow the esrog inside the box that it should grow into an interesting shape. Can you see this esrog? It was grown inside the box and it grew into a certain shape. So the shaila is, what's the din? Possible. Oh, so we've got a long list of esrogim which are possible. Now,
I don't want possible the shape one.
oh, we'll discuss a little bit, but we'll discuss. Why is the Gemara asked like this? What was the question of Bob if it's moldy on the inside? Says the Gemara, Ketonim is tefuach savuach. Tefuach usually means bloated, savuach means moldy. Usually moldy and bloated is the same thing. So my love, tefuach bloated is referring to outside them. It's just savuach b'bifnim, and we've got right to Bob's shaila. Look, both of them on the outside. One is bloated and one is moldy, and it's two separate things. Here they show you an esser which has got worms crawling out of it. That is not bloated, but it's got moldy, and that is possible. And tefuach, I don't know if they even showed you, but tefuach just means it's become bloated and very, very, very big. So therefore, since it's bloated, it is no good. So you've got no raya to Rav Shaila. There are two kinds of blemishes that's which are no good. Either it's bloated or it has become moldy. Omama, esser kushi possible. A black esser is possible. But Tanya kushi kosher. A black one is kosher. If it's similar to a black, it's possible. Now, Rashi is very disturbed, as you can imagine. Why would a black one be okay, but doimel kushi no good? Why would that be? How can that be? A black one's okay, but if it looks black, if it's similar to black, it's no good. Rashi answers that what happens is like this. According to this price, so we'll go stage by stage. We're talking about black one in a country where they grow black, which is in Ethiopia, Rashi says, then it is kosher, because everybody's used to black esrogim. Doimel kushi, meaning they grew in Eretz Yisrael, let's say we're not used to black esrogim, that's no good. Omar Abaya, Kita Namas Nisim, now Misha says it's no good. Doimel kushi, now we talk about similar. So again, no stira. You ask the question, one place says kosher, one place says it's kosher. The answer is when the Misha says it's kosher, it's not referring to genuine black, but it's referring to something similar to black, meaning it's nearby. It depends where. In Eretz Yisrael, where they're never used to seeing black esrogim, therefore it is possible. In Bava, where they're used to seeing black esrogim, it is kosher. Why are they more used to Bava? Because Bava is much, much closer to Kush. That's what Rashi says. After the thing, in the morning I learned the base Mordcha, and have people, somebody came out to me, he said, it doesn't stand Rashi. Rashi says that in Bava it's much more common to find black esrogim because it's right next to Kush, which is Ethiopia, which is much next to it. And so they're not used to it because it's far away. He said, if you look at the globe, it's absolutely not true. Eretz Yisrael is much, much closer to Ethiopia than Bava. I said, oh, I haven't got time for these kinds of questions. But I decided, so they asked the thing, I looked it up, and the mice, the Mephoshim asked it as a kasha. They ask it as a very strong kasha. How can Rashi say such a thing? That some of them leave Rashi as a kasha and they're stuck. How can Rashi say such a thing?
Why should that affect anyway the color of the fruit, which is where it comes from?
The reason is if it's black in the country where everybody's used to black, it's normal, nothing wrong. But if you take a black esrog in a place where nobody has a black esrog, it's no good.
It's not the color of the people, though.
I know. That's somebody else asked me. That I haven't seen anybody ask. This is a true question. That's a very good question. Why should in Ethiopia, just because there's black people, why should there be black esrogim? That I don't know. I haven't seen anybody discuss that. What?
Yeah,
but does that make esrogim black? The reason why people are black in Ethiopia is because the country is not. I don't know. That's a very good question. But I found that the Mephoshim said an interesting answer to Rashi. Oh, very good. One answer is a trading route. There was direct trading route from Ethiopia to Bava, which is southern Iraq, and there wasn't Eretz Yisrael. Another answer is that to go from Bava to Eretz Yisrael, you would go, so from Kush to Eretz Yisrael is overland, it's over Ethiopia, which you have to cross the desert. Crossing the desert, nobody ever did. But going from Kush to Bovel, how would people do it by boat? And therefore it's common. Okay. Lemaisa, Shalom, have you ever seen any black esrogim? Maybe they don't get right. Lemaisa, you should just know that a black esrog in the country which they're rare is possible, but in the country which they're common is okay. Yusuf. Esrog aboisa, an unripe esrog. We keep a person from Machshir. Machlikas with Kiva and Chachol. Omar Rabbi, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Kiva and Shimon is exactly the same thing. Why? Rabbi Kiva, he said that unripe esrog is no good. Of Shimon Mai, the Tanya Shimon Poitis Asugim Mekoita. What happens is if you have fruit growing, you have to take Tumas Amaisis. What happens if you cut the fruit down before they are ripe? So let's say I've got an orange tree and I pluck 100 oranges before they're ripe. Do I have to take Tumas Amaisis? Now, this is not such a straightforward question. One of the main questions is, has it any use? Does anybody think of what an unripe orange can be used for? What? What?
No,
No, it's not ripe. I thought somebody would guess. What? No. To replant it. To replant it is very useful to replanting. So therefore, in fact, an unripe, the question is, though, certain fruit, the Mishnah there tells us, do not grow if they're planted from a seed which was from a fruit which was never ripe. And certain fruit do. So it depends a little bit on that. But one of the criteria, that's one of the criteria. Another criteria is it a fruit at all? So Shimon says that you do not need to take Tumas Amaisis. So we see over here a common denominator, which Shimon says that an unripe esrog cannot be used as a esrog. And Shimon says an unripe esrog doesn't need to take Tumas Amaisis. What's the common denominator? An unripe esrog is not a fruit. It says, well, perhaps you can't compare what? You wouldn't say it? Oh. Kiva says need a beauty, and there isn't. I will also maybe he holds that an unripe esrog have to take Tumas Amaisis, and it's considered enough of a fruit to take Tumas Amaisis. But to use it for your Abba minimum, which is hot, that's not. The amount which you take to then produce Tvuas Arecho can mean the produce of your seed. It can also mean produce which creates seed. What people can use to plant. Here the there could be a chesson in Hodo, and here it could be a chesson that you can't plant it. The Gemara says there's nothing else to discuss, meaning the Gemara feels so strongly that the two arguments are incomparable that the Gemara says there's nothing left to discuss, and the two arguments are not connected at all. New topic. If you make it like an entire new creation, then it is possible. Says the Gemara, only if it's like a whole new creation. If you plant it, if you grow it in a tree, and you mold it in a mold which is similar to something which an esrog might look like, kosher. Then pshita, it says, what did study such thing? It says clearly like something else. That you made it with grooves which are such, which look like a water wheel. Rashi says. Interesting. And for some reason, this, if it doesn't have any pictures on this particular thing, this one does. It's got not a bad picture. I'd like to show it if I can. Stick it over here. It didn't have a picture. Oh, yeah. Not such a big picture, so I don't see. This is called the water wheel. It's a wheel that gets turned by, it's got lots of spokes, and it turns when the water rushes past it. This is an esrog with very, very deep grooves. Now, all esrogim have grooves. That's actually a normal growth of an esrog. It's got on the contrary, an esrog which is too smooth, one has to be choshesh, it might be a lemon. Now, the Gemara says over here that if you grew an esrog with deep grooves, so that it should look like a water wheel, because it's got those spokes coming out, then halacha is, it's still okay, because it's within the normal boundaries of what the esrog looks like. Now, that's a very good question. If you make it a completely different picture, why is it no good? What's wrong with it? So, Maisa, somebody shouldn't say it's a chesson in a hodol, that it's lacked beauty. You've changed it. You've changed the tzuras esrog. It's not beautiful. Some say because it's not. The Torah says free hates hodol. This is the kind by growing it to the tfus. It's not an esrog anymore. It's like you've created a new burial.
Can you put a mold of esrog?
Yes, yes, you can. You can put the mold of a perfect esrog that it should grow like a perfect esrog, but not that it should grow in the shape of something else. Free is hard. Fruit of a tree, which is hard. The fruit is being hard.
Not the fruit when you use the tree.
No. a beautiful fruit of a tree. It's the essence of the kuach bomb, which has been bitten by mice. Omarav in the hada, it's the hada card use. Any. But Bechanina matbel bov nafik. Bechanina used to eat his esrog and at the same time use it for albumin. Every day would have a little bite and use it for his albumin. Now a few points. First point is, why did he say matbel? He would dip with it. Why didn't you just say you ate it? Rashi says the same answer in many places. I didn't psochim. What does Rashi answer? A bit more. Why did you use especially dipped his esrog? That's why eating his esrog. Rashi says because in the olden days, nearly all eating was done by dipping. That was what was the normal way of eating. When you ate something, you would dip it into a slice and eat it, dip it into a dip and eat it. So matvel is the word which became common for a normal word of eating. Okay. So what did he used to do? He used to eat it. Tesis points out, actually not here, so where was the Tesis? The Tesis says that what happened was he would first eat it and then he would shake it, because once it had been first he would shake it, then he would eat it. Okay, we'll come to it later. We'll discuss the concept of a muktzah by Esra. That's also the point out that Chanina could very be Chanina ben Doisa. What do we know about Chanina ben Doisa? He was very, very, very poor. How poor was he? He didn't have Shabbos candles. Very good. He couldn't afford Shabbos candles. He couldn't afford wood to heat up to bake dough. The Gemara also says that in an entire week he only ate one small measure of calories. So Pashtus, the reason he did it was simply like a lack of choice. This was the only food he had, so he would eat his essence. We're going to discuss that. Furthermore, Chanina kasha must listen. Our Mishnah is kasha, because the Mishnah says that if it's missing, it's no good, and definitely if you ate something, it's missing. Well, Mishnah must listen. Chanina kasha can be on to Mishnah, can be on to Sheni. In Yom Tov Vision, you need Hodah. On the second days, you don't, and therefore it could very well be that. Sorry, Kichatamo. Kachtem means the Kichatamo. It has to be complete, but Mashenk in the other days it's not complete. It's only midrabanan. And Rav kasha. According to Rav, it's kasha because according to Rav was saying that all 7 days is possible. That means according to Rav, an essence which is bitten by mice is possible all week. When the mice eat it, it becomes off-putting. And therefore it's worse than a human being eating it. So if a human being eats it, it's possible only the first day, the rest of Succos is okay. If mice eat it, it's possible the whole week. It could be the same thing in different versions. It's okay if mice eat it. Because the Chanina used to eat his esrog and the Yotza. So the first day you can't eat your esrog, afterwards you can, and we should be aware that my statistics later points out that eating an esrog has anyway got a big problem because of the problem of muktzah. And that Chanina would make a special condition on his esrog that he should not become muktzah. You're not allowed to eat your esrog. It becomes muktzah the mitzvah, so you can't. Not only not allowed to smell your hadassim, right? Because it's muktzah for the mitzvah. Okay.
On the second day, you eat half the desperate, and you go to shul, you shake half the desperate.
Yes. Because he held that the first day you need a kichatamo, the rest of it is because you don't need a kichatamo. Why? He held it's okay. He held it's okay. We see all that today. Eser cotton. What's the smallest size? Eser got machlokes of men of Yehuda. What was machlokes of men of Yehuda? Rameir says a nut. Very good. Rabbi Yehuda says an egg. The halach is that on Shabbos a person goes to the bathroom and needs to wipe himself. Nowadays they used to use stones. Sharp kuzolis means sharp stones. You have to use sharp stones because if they're not sharp, you can't use it to wipe yourself. And the halach is you're allowed to be over even an issa d'rabbanon to be able to do that because Godel Kvod Havius. Which Issa D'Rabbanan is there in using stones to clean yourself? Your job pig. There are those who say Tchum, but that's not possible. There's more there says. There are those who say simple pshat. First of all, stones on muktzah, so you've got Issa D'Rabbanan on muktzah. But furthermore, Rashi says we're talking about a person who leaves himself in the Rishus Rabim, and you're not allowed to what? That's right. He didn't dedicate stones to the muktzah. Alternatively, he didn't Rishus Rabim. Now, carrying less than 4 amos in Rishus Rabim is also D'Rabbanan. More than 4 amos is also Minatoyah. So if there's stones nearby, which only needs to carry less than 4 amos, that's another Issa D'Rabbanan. Tesis also discussed it. There's a very long tesis that we're discussing over here. Stones which are not Issurei Deraisa. For example, we're not talking about carrying more than 4 amos in Rishus Rabim. or knocking down a building to take stones, because that would be everybody agrees local. Okay. So halacha is allowed to. Now here we have the other way around. Our Mishnah, we're talking about swigim, but we're talking about the minimum size. Minimum size either a nut or an egg. Here, when we talk about stones, we talk about a maximum size. The bigger the stone, the more unyieldy it is, and the more difficult to swipe yourself with it. So the Gemara over here says, the Tanya b'Shabbat, you'll have to take 3 sharp stones to a Beis HaKisei. How big? And here it's a maximum shir, not a minimum shir. The Meir says anything bigger than a nut, you can't use it. Since it won't help you, you can't move it because it's muktzah. And the Yoda says, no, up to an egg, you can still use it. So they're both arguing in this, that means both times, one says a nut, one says an egg, but it's completely 2 different machlokes. In our Mishnah, the machlokes has got to do with how developed the esrog is. Does it have to be the size of a nut, the size of an or of an egg? The guy with there in Shabbos is a technical question. What size stone is the right size stone to take the bathroom? And Meir says up to a nut. Abdullah says no, even the size of an egg can still be used. Okay. Well, a big one, as long as you can hold 2 in one hand, and another man says even 1 in 2 hands. He had his esrog on his shoulder. Is that the proof? So I have a story that Akiva brought his esrog to shul on his shoulder. There's a big question in the Mefarshim. Is that, was he yotza by carrying the esrog on his shoulder, or do you have to carry it in your hands? Most of the Shulim hold that carrying an esrog on your shoulder, you're not yotza. So the question is, if it was too big to carry in his hand, and if he carried it on his shoulder, what was the purpose of the esrog? He can't use it. And if he could carry it in his hand, why was it in his shoulder? There's one very, very simple answer. What's the simple answer? That to carry it for a short time, he was able to do it in his hands. But to be able to take it all the way from home to shul, that was a long way. So therefore, what he did was, on the way to shul, he put it on his shoulder because it was a big, heavy burden. But when he actually shook the Arbanim, then he held it in his hand. The time of the mitzvah, he held it in his hand. But the rest of the time, put it in his shoulder because it was too big. What? Sorry? No, the Gemara was trying to demonstrate how big the esrog is. It was so big, he put it on his shoulder, meaning it was so big, he couldn't carry it. He had to put it on his shoulder to be able to do it. So obviously it was a very, very big esrog. If it was so big, says the Shulim, that he couldn't carry it in his hands and he was forced to use his shoulder to carry it, so how was it carried the mitzvah? So the answer simply is, it was too big to carry it to shul in his hand. But during the mitzvah, of course he could carry it in his hand. Otherwise, he would be yotzah. Says the Mishnah. You have to use something of a lulav. That means you have to use a dasma. You can't use gold or something to tie the lulav. Even with the string, you can tie it with the string. They used to use gold bands. So you see that gold's okay. Within the knot, they would have a normal thing, let's say a lulav leaf or a das leaf. And then on top of that, they use the gold knot, but not that they only use gold. Okay. It says you can even use the trunk of the lulav and even the bark of a lulav. That means like this. When we say that you have to use b'minoi of the lulav, the same species as the lulav, we don't mean it has to be a lulav leaf. It can even be a lulav root, a lulav branch, a lulav trunk, or a lulav bark. Everything that grows from the lulav is okay. It can't be an orange leaf, it can't be an orange branch, but it can be anything that grows from the lulav. What's the svar of Abiyudah? Why can't you use gold to tie up your lulav? Because you have to tie the lulav. If you start bringing in another one, if you didn't have to tie up the lulav, and the only reason you did it was just to enhance it, so there's nothing wrong with using gold, because it's not part of the mitzvah. But if it is mechuyev, if you're obligated to tie it, then by tying it with gold, you're actually taking 5 things, not 4 things. We mentioned once before, for example. There's nothing wrong with carrying the Abba Minim with a machsa. Why? Because at the end of the day, we don't look at the machsa as a 5th thing. It's nothing to do with it. You don't need a machsa. So therefore, it's considered 4 plus a machsa. But if you need to tie up a lulav and you tie it up with a branch from, let's say, an orange tree, so then you're using 5 because it's part of the mitzvah. And therefore, the machlokes as to whether you can use gold or not is dependent on which machlokes. Whether you have to tap the lulav. The machlekes, whether you can use a gold string to tie up the lulav, is dependent on the machlekes you have to tie up. What do we pass? Do you have to tie your lulav? No. We say it's a mitzvah, it's a hiddur, you don't have to. So could we use gold?
Yeah.
Right. So I look forward to all of you. You can use gold. Says the Gemara. How do I know it? This, by the way, it's still a hiddur to use from the Abba Minim. How do I know? Rabbi Yehuda said, what did Rabbi Yehuda say? You have to use this one of the 4 minim. As for lulav, you have to use one of the 4. Came along Rava. What was Rava's Ikar Chiddush? What? Not anything. What was Rava's Chiddush? What was Rava's Chiddush? What was Rava's Chiddush? What did Rava come along to tell us? That even the bark of a lulav tree is considered a lulav tree. You shouldn't say when you say even the min of the lulav, it has to be literally the min of the lulav, even if it's the bark of the lulav tree. Says Rava, we know amin a lot. We're going to now do till about 10 a few lines into the next onward, just to clarify the proof of Rava. Rava, what was Rava's chiddush? You have to get it very clear. There's no point trying to prove how Rava knew his chiddush without being clear what was Rava's chiddush. Rava's chiddush was that the Mishnah says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to use a min of a lulav. Says Rava, it doesn't mean literally the lulav leaf itself, so even the branch of the lulav is also good. Says Rava, how can I prove it that the bark branch of the tree is lulav? The Tanya. Where Succos Meir holds, you can use any kind of sukkah, meaning you can use an orange leaf as schach. It's a very chiddush, but that's the first time we came across it. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the only thing you can use for schach is the 4 minimum of the lulav. You can use a swege. You can't actually use a swege. You can use swege branches. You can use lulav branches. You can use adasi branches, but you can't use, for example, our bamboo canes. According to Rabbi Yehuda, no good. But I didn't know. Says Rabbi Yehuda, I'm going to prove it to you. How am I going to prove it to you? You're not yotze lulav in the night, only during the day. So it's obviously not such a stringent thing. And you only use 4 minim. Sukkah, which applies at night and at day. So which is more chamor? What's more chamor? What's more stringent? Sukkah or lulav? Sukkah. Because sukkah applies both day and night, and lulav only applies during the day. If the Torah tells us by the Abba Minim that it has to be only during the day and you have to use only those 4 minim, Kavachim is sukkah, which is day and night, there has to be 4 minim. A Kavachim which starts off looking like a chumrah, but eventually comes to kula eno din. That's not a Kavachim. That means if you create a Kavachim and the end of the Kavachim comes out a kula, which is the opposite of what we were trying to get to, it's the counterintuitive, it's the opposite we're trying to get to, then it's a cow, it's a chayma kal, it's not kav chayma. It says go top lang zan dalef. No motz abas minim yeshiva bottom vateros gestisha shiva sam suga shokadova. He said to Rabbi Yehuda, what are you saying? You are saying that what? You have to use only the Abba Minim. Why? Kav chayma, if already during Abba Minim, which is during the day, you have to use 4 minim. Kav chayma is sukkah. Let's say somebody can't find any hadas leaves, can't find any avav leaves, any lulav leaves. What will he do? Go and sit in the sukkah because it doesn't have, which comes out a kula, meaning they end up not sitting in the sukkah. All those that don't have access to Abba Minim are part from sukkah. So your kavachayma actually created a kula. So therefore, they didn't agree with him. So we have a machlokes tanoim as to whether you have to use the Abba Minim for schach. Right? The work carries on. Going to the mountain. Review ale zayis, bring olive leaves, vale ate shemen and date trees. Some would say vale had different kind of olive, vale hadas, vale tmon, vale ate ovos, vasu sukkos kakosov, do sukkos like it's written. Now all the things are written in this pasuk. All of them are with the Abba Minim? No. Ale zayis is certainly not the Abba Minim. Ale zayis is the olive leaf. Is a vine, not like a community. You don't need the Abba Minim. These were just for the walls, but not for the branch. The pasuk there, when they were collecting in the days of Ezra material to build sukkahs, they weren't collecting for the schach, they were collecting for the walls. It says the Gemara, you're allowed to use boards. Again, let's go briefly. Rava says, I've got a chiddush to tell you. In our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda came along and told us a chiddush. What was Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush in our Mishnah? What was Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush? You have to use Abba Minim to do what? To tie up your lulav. Came along Rava and said, I'm going to add to Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush. Not only the Abba Minim, but even the branches, the bark, and the trunk of the trees also. It says, Rava, how can I prove it? I'll prove it to you like this. The halacha is, we have a machlokes of Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, right in the first paper. Can you use boards for schach? Can you use boards for schach? What was the problem of using boards? It looks like you've seen it. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends how big. I know machlokes. Now boards. Now Rabbi Yehuda also says that what you're allowed to use for schach only for minim. That's a contradiction. What's Rabbi Yehuda discussing? Which boards are kosher, which boards are possible? It makes no the slightest difference which boards are kosher, which boards are possible. You hold that you have to use 4 minim. The 4 minim, none of them are boards. Is the answer that what? That you can use the trunk. Since you can use the trunk for the schach, now you have a question: what happens if it's a board? Can you use it or not? Similarly, says Rabbi Yehuda holds that you have to use the 4 minim for your minim. Therefore, you can also use the trunk and the board and the bark. I want to get at least here because 5 is always a short. Do a bit more. Did Rabbi Yehuda say only those 4 minim and nothing else? Tanya sicha but the soim shel eres. The simple translation is boards made out of cedar wood. And the halacha is then sheish ben dalet tefachim, if it's 4 tefachim wide, diva kol psula. Ein ben abad tefachim, it's less than 4 tefachim wide, and mere person of Yehuda machshav. Umoidu amesh mis ben nesen and nesek v'lo nesesh v'nech psal. What is psal? Anybody remember what is psal? Schach. Why is it called psal? Because the Torah says psulis gern v'yekem. The leftovers gern v'yekem. So you put schach in between mikshel. So it says clearly that you can use cedar boards. How can the Buddha say you're allowed to use the 4 minim? We have a Mefusha Brisa saying they can use cedar. Says the Gemara, no. My eres hadas. Cedar is a kind of hadas. There are 10 kinds of cedars. The Gemara says that cedar and hadas are interchangeable. There's 10 kinds of cedar. One of them is a hadas tree. And therefore, you've got back to square one that the hadas is the cedar, and therefore it's not a kasha. So we've got 2 very big chidushim from Rabbi Yehuda today. One, you're only allowed to tie up your Abba Minim with Abba Minim, not gold, etc. Do we pass like Rabbi Yehuda? No.
You don't have to tie it.
That's right. We do try to use Abba Minim, we don't have to. Right? I have seen people using elastic bands to tie up the Abba Minim, because we don't hold that Rabbi Yehuda. Another chidush of Rabbi Yehuda is that you're not allowed to use chach except if it's for the Abba Minim. Do we pass like Rabbi Yehuda? No, we all use bamboo canes and all kinds of things. Very good. Okay, so up to Amir Oimah. We will get, I don't know how much we'll get to because my sons have also start back to school, so I've always, I know, but Shachris is 7:25, so we'll have time in this Hashem. Shachris is 7:25, and Shir on Shabbos, I would really like it to be 6:05 again, like last week. A lot of people object. No? Right, okay. 6:05 on Shabbos.
Well, that's a share. That's
And then Mincha is 6:45. Am I right? 6:45 is before Mincha. 5:06. Right. And Mincha will be 6:45. Right. Okay, very good. So nice to see you, Tony. Look like you got a very nice view there.
Very nice, Baruch
Yeah.
Hashem.
Nice. The weather's gone better.
Yeah.